Good evening, everyone. Welcome to session 3 of Android Study Jam. I am Krishnendu Nambyar, Organizations Head at DSC MEC, and we have our facilitator here, Gokulnath. Welcome, Gokulnath.
Hello guys, good evening. I hope all of you have went through the app that we made yesterday, and we'll be continuing that today. So yeah, so I think we can switch the screen.
Okay.
Krishnan. Okay, so everybody just open up your project that we started yesterday, and just tell me in the comments when you have opened up that project. Can take some time. So while you open up that project, let me actually recap what happened, what we did yesterday. So yesterday we started off with this activity main.xml file. Okay, so this is where we actually defined all the UI elements for our app. So we created, first of all, let me actually show you that app. Yeah, so this is the app that we are intending to create. So first of all, we had created this text input layout. This is where we get the user input for the app, and it inputs a decimal number. So the first thing that we declared was a text input layout, and then we had a text input edit text. This is where the actual input takes place. Then we had a text view that was for this question, how was the service. So we made a text view, we gave it all the constraints and gave its height and width. Then we created these radio buttons. So for that we need a radio group, and we had created that one, and we had set its orientation to vertical so that it appears vertically on the screen rather than horizontally. So then we created the various buttons, gave them their whatever they were displaying, like amazing 20%, good 18%, and okay 15%. And the next thing that we created was a roundup tip option. This is a switch. So we created a switch and added all the various constraints to it, and the width and height. And the last thing that was there was a button. So the button, we created the button, and we had a similar constraint to that of the switch material. So we had say the same constraints and a width of 0 dp, which means it will match the constraints and it will be as wide as the constraint. And finally we created a text view, and in that text view we are supposed to print our final answer, right? So the amount of tip that uh, we have calculated. So for that we created a text view, but we can't really tell what the value will be right here, right? So we need the input from the user in order to display this text view. We need to analyze that input and do some calculations, and then we'll get a output, and that output should be put as the value of this text view. So we haven't given it the text attribute yet, but we gave a tools text attribute. So what does this tools text attribute do? It will actually create, if you go into this design view, it will actually create a text that is to be shown on this layout for the developer to see, but it won't be shown in the app. So this is basically what we did yesterday. Can you guys just comment in the chat whether you are ready with this file or not? If you have opened up Android Studio and opened this project, please do type a yes in the chat. I'll be waiting for you. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm sorry for this. So first of all, let us actually run this app and check whether everything looks okay. So uh, I hope all of you know how to run an app on your phone. So if you don't know, if you're using your own phone as for doing this testing, you need to enable USB debugging in your settings. You need to enable that developer options, and then inside the developer options you will see a setting called USB debugging. You need to enable that in order to run the app on your phone, and you just need to connect it using your charger cable to the USB port of your computer. So, and if you're using an emulator, that won't be an issue. You just need to select the emulator from this drop down here, and it will start showing. So let's just run this app and see how it looks like. So let me actually come up. So once you run this app, you'll see this. This is how we did it last day. So you have a cost of service text box, text input box here. Then this text, how was the service, and then a bunch of radio buttons, a switch, and a calculate button. You can actually type in things in here. Let me actually move this out of the way. So you can actually type in any number here, and then select these radio buttons. All of that will work. And once you do that, you can click this calculate button, but the output will not be shown right now because we haven't written any code. So you just have this text here, and now what we need to do is we need to write the code for this to calculate this thing. So that's what we are going to do first of all today. So I think there was so I think you mean how to run this app, right? So for that you just need to enable USB debugging on your device. Are you asking how to enable that? So actually, to enable USB debugging, you need to go into your settings and go into about phone. And in that, in different phones, it will be different. But on my phone, I just need to click this MIUI version thing. On some phones, it will be Android kernel version. On some phones, it will be some other UI version or something. You just need to click that 4 or 5 times, and you will become. There will be a toast message saying that you have become a developer. And once you do that, you can actually search for developer settings, developer options, and in that you can scroll down. There are a lot of options here, and you need to make sure that USB debugging is turned on and install via USB. That thing also turned on. You need to turn on these two things, and once you do that and connect to your computer, first if you are connecting it for the first time, it will actually ask you whether you want to run USB debugging with this computer. You need to accept that thing, and once you do that, you can actually click on this run button, and the app will start running on your device like this. So I hope your doubt was clear. Please do tell in the chat if that was what you expected me to answer. Okay, so let's just move on to our app now. So we have created all of these elements, right? Now we need to process the information that the user has given. So for that, we need to actually implement some logic, and we'll be doing that using this main activity.kt file, right? So before we do anything, I think I need to change some settings. Yeah. So first of all, before we do any editing with this thing, I want everybody to actually click on this file option on the top left corner of your computer in Android Studio, and click on file, and then there will be an option called new project settings. New project settings, and in that go to settings for new projects, and there a new window will appear, and you will see this appearance and behavior here, and there will be a bunch of menus on the left side. So on that, click on other settings, expand other settings, and go to this setting called auto import, or you can alternatively just type in here auto import and it will show up. So once you go into auto import, I need you guys to enable four of these checkboxes. That is, in auto import, in the Java section, there will be an add and unambiguous imports on the fly and optimize imports on the fly. And in the Kotlin section also, there will be an add and unambiguous imports on the fly and optimize imports on the fly. I need you guys to enable four of these options so that it will be easier for us to write the code. It will actually import the various packages and classes that we may need while running the app. So please do enable these things. It will be really helpful for you to develop apps. So once you do that, click on this apply button and click OK. Right. So if you have any doubts, please do ask in the chat. So once you have done that, we can actually start working on this main activity.kt file. So actually, we started out a little bit yesterday, and we had created a thing called view binding, and we had created a variable for that that was called binding, and we gave the value as activity main binding dot inflate of layout inflator. We had given that value, and we had set the content view to binding dot true. Right. So now we can actually process the information that the user inputs, and how according to his interaction, according to the user's interaction, we need to change various things. So we need to actually access all of these UI elements in our activity main.kt. And for making that easier, we have created this binding object. So now let us actually process the things. So first of all, we'll create a new function inside our main activity class. So just after this onCreate function ends, but inside the main activity, you need to create a new function. So in order to create a function, you just type in the fun keyword, fun. That's a keyword in Kotlin. You use it to create all your functions. And I'm going to name this function as calculate tip, and you open two brackets and then a pair of curly braces. Right. So now we have created a function. Now I also would like to make this a private function. So why private? Because this will only be used inside this main activity class and nowhere else. So it is pretty safe to make this private, so that no other code will interfere with this calculate tip function. So make this thing private using the private keyword. So now, what is the first thing that we actually need? Well, if you look at this, the first thing that the user would obviously input is the cost of service text. This thing is what is the basis of our app. Based on this, the whole tip amount can change. So this is the first thing that we need to access. So in order to do that, we will create a variable to store that value that the user inputs. So for that, just create a variable using the val keyword, val, and I'm going to name this variable string in text field. Okay, so string in text field. Now, why do I name it like this? Well, actually, the input that the user gives in this text box will actually be stored as a string, even though we had given its where is it? Yeah, so right here we had given the input type to be number decimal, right? Number decimal, we had given it yesterday. So even though we give it as number decimal, what will happen is it will The meaning of this number decimal is that it will only allow the user to input decimal numbers and no other characters, but actually it will be stored as a string. So we need to take this string from this UI element. So for that, we just need to give the value to this variable val string in text field equals. Now how do we access this thing? We had already created a binding object, right? So using that binding object, we can access any element in this activity main.xml layout file. So what is the name that we gave to our text input edit text? This is where the text will, the user input will be stored, right? In this text input edit text. So what is the name that we gave that? It was actually the ID name was post underscore of underscore service underscore edit underscore text. So this is the name of the text input edit text. So when a binding object is created, what will happen is this ID name will be changed to the name of the object, and for that what it will do is it will remove these underscores and write the whole text in camel case. So let me actually show you so that you get a better understanding. So val string in text field. Now what we need to access this uh, text input edit text. So first of all, we have to access it through the binding. So I write binding dot operator means that out from the binding get something. So what is that something? That is actually this cost of service edit text. And if you look at this, if you just type in cost of service, and you will get this suggestions box, and you just take cost of service edit text. That is where our string will be stored. And now what this will actually give us the object, right? But we actually need the text inside of that object, the text content that the user had in. So we need to access the text parameter of that object. So again, put a dot and type in text. So this will actually give us the text object, and to make sure that it is in string, because sometimes it will be in a some other format, we need to convert it into the string data type. So for that you need to type again a dot and use a built-in function in Kotlin known as toString, the second one here. So toString, what this will do is it will convert whatever format this text object was and convert it to a string object so that we can easily use it in our code. So I hope this was clear. Now the next thing we need to do is actually to process numbers. It is easier if we use some integer data type or a floating point data type instead of using this string data type, right? So we need to convert this string into a number. So for that, I'm going to create another variable and I'm going to call it cost. So first of all, you can type in val cost, okay, equal to. So this is my variable, its name is cost. And what do we need in that thing? We need the actually since we can input decimal numbers, it will always be better if we use double, right? It would make sense if we use double. If you use int, there may be a uh, loss in the accuracy of the number. So we need to convert this string in text field into a double data type. So for that, you type in string in text field. Okay, now we need to convert this to a double data type. So for that, we use another built-in function in Kotlin known as toDouble. So you just type in to and then double. Select the toDouble, the first one that appears when you type double. So toDouble. So what this will do is it will take this string and convert it into a double data type. So now that we have our cost, now what is the next thing that we need to check? So we have completed the task with this UI element. We have got the text that the user had input. So this task has been fulfilled. Now the next task is this radio button, right? So in this radio button, we need to check which radio button is actually selected, because depending on the radio button, there will be a change in the percentage that we take for the tip. So uh, we have 3 radio buttons here, and we need to check which radio button has been selected by the user. So we need to create another variable that will store the ID of whichever radio button was selected. So I'm going to create a val variable with the name checked radio button. Checked radio button. Okay, just type in checked radio button, and we need to assign the value to it. So how do we get that value? First of all, we need to access the radio button, right? Because we can't just take it out of nowhere. We need to access this radio buttons. So just look, if we look into the activity main.xml file, and we had created this radio group, and the name we had given for that radio group was tip options. So that is the thing that we need to access using our binding object. So first of all, we need to access the binding object. So we type in binding, and from that binding object, we need the tip options, right? Tip options radio group. So for that, just type in dot and select tip options, not the tip result, but the tip options. So this will give us access to this radio button. Now from that radio button, we need to get the ID of the checked button. There will be only one checked button, because in a radio group you can only select one checked button. So to get the checked button, we can actually, there's a parameter for every button, every radio button, and that is called checked radio button ID. So this will actually return the ID of the checked radio button. That is, it will give us this ID, right? So it will actually give us which radio button has been selected by the user. So we have got that in this variable. Now we need to check which of the radio buttons was selected. We have got the radio button that was selected, and now we need to check which of these 3 was selected. There are 3 radio buttons, and we need to check which one was selected. So for that, and according to that, we need to give a variable known as percentage, so that we can select whichever percentage that we want, that is whether it is 20% or 18% or 15%. So actually, if you had seen the first session of our Android study jams, we had learned about the when statements. When statement is similar to switch statements in other languages like Java and C. It does the same thing, but it is called as when statements in Kotlin. So in the when state, there's actually a feature in Kotlin that will allow us to actually use the when statement for assigning values to variables. So for that, let's just actually create a variable known as, we use the val keyword and type in tip percentage. You can name it anything that you want, but I'm going to name this as tip percentage. And now we need the value. So the value of the tip percentage will actually depend on the selected radio button, right? If the first one is selected, the value should be 20% or 0.2. If the second one is selected, it should be 0.18. And if the third one is selected, it should be 0.15. So we need to know which one is selected. So for that, I'm going to use a when statement. As I already told you, you can use when statements to use assigning values to variables in Kotlin. So just type in when and open a pair of brackets. So regular brackets. And in that, we need to pass the thing that we need to check. So we got the checked radio button ID in this variable known as checked radio button. So this will actually give us an integer value, that is all the IDs are actually stored as integers in the memory, and it will give us back the ID of the uh, button that has been selected. So this will actually be an integer, so we can use it inside a when statement, similar to what we do in switch statements in other languages. So just pass this checked radio button, select this checked radio button from the options, and you need to open a pair of curly braces. Okay, so once you do that, we need to give the various cases, that is when the radio button check the radio button is this one, we need to give the value as 0.2. When the radio button is this one, we need to select 0.18. So like that we need to give the options. So for that, actually I already told you these values are stored as integers, and it will be generally of the form r dot id dot and then the name of the option that we gave in our file, so in our xml file. So for the first option we had given the name option 20%, right? So it will be actually stored with the id r dot id dot option 20%. So in the drop down menu it will show the various options, and you take option 20%, and then now we have selected the option 20%, and if the checked radio button is same as this thing, what do we need to do? We need to set the percentage to 20%. So just in order to give the value, you need to make an arrow using a hyphen and then a greater than symbol. So this will actually make an arrow, and the value you write after this arrow will be stored in the variable known as tip percentage. So what is the percentage that we want? It is 0.2 or 20%. That's actually 0.2. You can just type in 0.2, and if the user selects the second radio button, that is option 18%, we need to set it to 0.18. So you just as the next option in the next line you type in r dot id dot option 18%. The previous one we did the 20%, now we need to do the 18%. So take that option and again make a hyphen and a greater than symbol, so that you make an arrow, and then type in the value as 0.18, right? And now for the last one. So for the last one, actually if you just try and write r dot id dot option 15% and you give the value as say 0.15, even though your syntax is probably correct, you haven't written anything wrong, but this statement won't work. You will see a red mark here saying that when expression must be exhaustive, add necessary else branch. So this is happening because it won't happen in a regular when statement, but here we are actually using this when statement to assign a value to a variable. So no matter what the option gets checked, we need some value in this tip percentage. We can't just leave it unvalued. We need to have a default value in case any of these options do not match. So we need to actually change this a little bit. You need to remove this thing, and after the option 18%, you need to make an else statement, right? And in the else you make a arrow again using a hyphen and a greater than symbol, and just type in 0.15. So the logic behind this is that even if the user has actually three choices and any one of them will always be selected, either the 18% or the 20% or the 15%, any one of them will always be selected. So if the option is not 20% and if the option is not 18%, then obviously the option will be 15%, right? So we need to set the third one to 15%. So that's what this thing has done. And always when you write when statement to assign a value to a variable, you need to always write an else statement, else part in the when statement. This is mandatory, right? So was that clear? Can we have a thumbs up in the chat whether you understood what we did right now? If there is any doubt, please do ask. We can go through any of these portions. It's kind of obvious, but then again, if you're new to this thing, this may feel a little bit uncomfortable when you use this kind of when statements to assign values to percentages. So if there is anything, please do tell me. If everything is clear, please do tell that in the chat. Yeah, okay, so I think it was all clear. Now we got the tip percentage. Now, what is the next thing that we need? So once we have the tip percentage and the cost, we can actually calculate this tip amount, right? The roundup switch comes after that. We can think about the roundup switch after that. We can actually calculate that this amount right now because we have all the parameters needed for that. We have this input number and also this selected radio button. So now we can actually calculate the tip amount. So I'm going to create a variable. So I'm using a var keyword so that I can actually edit this this variable later on, because depending on the whether this roundup tip switch is selected or not, we may have to change the value a little bit so that it gets rounded up or not depending on the switch. So so since we have to change, we know that we may have to change the variable later on. I'm using the var keyword instead of the val keyword. So var, and then I'm going to name this variable as tip. So this is where we will store the final tip amount, and this will be equal to what? It is basic logic that it will be cost times the tip percentage. So you can just type in cost star tip percentage, right? So now we have the tip amount that is to be displayed right here. So this will calculate the tip amount, right? So I think that was pretty obvious. Now the next thing is we need to check whether this switch is toggled in the on position or in the off position, because depending on that we need to actually change the format of this tip amount. If the roundup switch is turned on, we need to round this up to the nearest to the next highest integer, and if this is this roundup tip is turned off, we need to display the tip without the without rounding it up to anything. So first of all we need to check that. So like we did with the this radio button, to check which radio button was selected, we need to check whether the switch is in the on position or in the off position. So we need to actually create another variable similar to this one. So use a val, and I'm going to name this roundup. So this will store whether this switch is toggled in the on position or in the off position. So val roundup equals, now we need to access the switch. If you look into this XML file, we had named the switch as roundup switch. So we are using a binding, so let's just call the binding object binding dot, and from that binding we need to select the roundup switch. So you just select the roundup switch from that menu, right? Roundup switch. So from that roundup switch we need to know whether the switch is toggled in the on position or in the off position. So for that there is actually a parameter called is checked. It is kind of similar to what we had here. We had checked the radio button ID for the radio button. Now we are using a parameter known as is checked. So this will actually give us a Boolean value that is, it will either be true or be false. It cannot be both. It can only be one at a time. And if this radio button is in this position, that is in the on position, the result will be true, and if it is in the off position, it will be false. I think it's pretty clear and unambiguous part. So we have this thing. Now we need to check whether we actually, if this thing results in true, we need to round up the tip, right? We need to round up the tip. So I'm going to use an if statement. So you must be probably familiar with if statements. So I'm not going to tell you the details about if statements. So inside the if statement, we need to check whether this roundup tip is true or not. So you just pass in roundup inside the if statement. So since this is a Boolean value, this will result in either true or false. So in either way, the if statement will work without anything. You just need this thing. You don't need to put like equal to true or anything. You just need to type in roundup. That's enough. So if you if roundup, right? So now you open a pair of curly braces, right? So now if the roundup switch is selected, if it is as given as true, then we need to round this tip variable to the next lowest integer. That is, suppose we had here something like 307.5, then we need to make it 308. Just a minute, there's a doubt. I have a doubt. Can tip percentage be accessed outside the calculate? Actually, you cannot access it outside the calculate tip function, because we had declared the thing inside this function. So it will only be accessible inside this function. Moreover, this function is given as private, so even this function cannot be used anywhere else outside this main activity class. So it will definitely not be accessible. I think that was what you asked for. It won't be accessible outside this calculate tip. And for the purpose of this app, we won't be requiring this thing outside this function. So don't worry about that. There won't be any errors. We can move on to rounding up the tip. So as I was saying, if, for example, in this screenshot, if you look at here, the roundup tip has been selected, and the tip amount that was displayed was 308. So what this means is that tip amount must be how calculate. You will get it later on. We have to actually call this function in order to calculate the tip, right? So this I think tip percentage is accessible inside this function. Okay, I think you got confused somewhere with these brackets. So tip percentage is a variable that we declared inside this calculate tip function, and we are still accessing it inside the calculate tip function itself. The calculate tip function ends here, so it is not outside the function. I think you got confused with the brackets. So yes, it's okay. So right, so we need to round up this tip. So we are going to actually, if the roundup tip is true, we will actually make it to the next lowest integer. That's what we are going to do. So for that, we need to modify this tip variable, right? We are going to modify the tip variable. So for that, you can just type in tip equals, and then we need to modify this. So actually, for making it easier for us, Kotlin has a lot of built-in functions. Like many other languages, there will be functions for basic math functions, and you can use one of those functions called Kotlin.math.seal. So just type in Kotlin dot math math dot seal. So this will actually do the thing is actually it will take the value that we pass into this function. It can either be a double value or a float value, and it will make it to the next lowest integer. That is, if the suppose this tip was actually calculated to 307.1 or 307.2 or any value between 307 and 308, then if the roundup switch is on, then what will happen is it will get converted to 308. So that is what this seal function does. Now we need to pass in a parameter into this seal function, and that is actually the tip that we calculated earlier on. So just pass in tip. So now what will happen is this tip will be passed. If the roundup switch is selected, then the tip will be passed into this seal function, and it will actually get updated to the new value and will be stored in the same variables. Right. So any questions so far? I hope it was clear. And yeah. So now, how do we actually print this in this kind of a format? Because if you see in the text view, we hadn't given any text value to this thing, but we need to actually print it in a specified format, right? So how do you do this? So first of all, we need to do one thing is we need to go into the strings.xml file. So for that, if you just click on this project window on the left side of your screen and select this app folder, and inside that there will be a res folder, not the res generated folder but the regular res folder, and inside the res folder there will be a folder known as values. So go inside that values folder and open up strings.xml. Right, this is where we actually gave all the strings yesterday. If you remember what we did yesterday, we had first of all we gave the text uh, as hard-coded strings inside the XML file, but then we realized that it is not a good way to do the strings. So actually we had created a lot of strings in this string.xml file. So for this text, for this tip amount 308 rupees, so this 308 will be changing, but the rest of this thing is in a specified format, right? So we need to create another string inside here, a string resource. So inside this file and inside this resources tag, but outside all other tags, you need to create a new string tag. So just type in string, and we need to give a name for that string. So I'm going to name it tip result, right? I'm going to name it tip amount. So amount. You can name it anything. Just make sure you have that. So once you do that, wait, let me just put a underscore here so that it will be easier. So you can name it anything. I have named it as tip underscore amount, and we need to specify the format, right? So in the format there is actually the text tip amount and a colon, and then there is a rupee symbol. So you can't actually type in rupee symbol using your keyboard. It's not actually a valid symbol. It may be present on some keyboards, but generally you don't have that symbol. So what we will do is we will just type in tip amount. So you need to write the string in between these tags, in between these opening and closing tags, and you just type in tip amount, then put a colon, and we'll just put a percentage s here. So what this will mean is that it will tell the Android system that this percentage s is to be replaced by some specified format that we are going to get from where we are declaring this tip amount variable. So just think of it this way. when you get this when you get this tip amount, this much of part of the text is taken from this Strings.xml, and the rest of this, that is this percentage s part, that will actually be given from the activity main activity.kt file, right? I hope it makes sense. So we have given it like this. Now we need to give it give the that part, we need to address that part of the string. So first of all, how do we get this rupee symbol? Now you might be wondering, we haven't hard coded it here, and how do we get it from this main activity thing? Because we can obviously get this number, that is easy enough. We just need to type give this tip variable to this percentages, so that will be printed. But how do you get this rupee symbol? So actually there are a lot of built-in functions in Kotlin that really help us do this job very easily, and one of them is known as number format dot get currency instance. So I will tell you more about that. First of all, we need to create another variable so that we can store the tip in a formatted manner, right? So formatted manner means it will have this tip amount text and this rupee symbol. So for all of that, we need to create another variable. So I'm going to create a val, and I'm going to name it for formatted tip. So this is where I'm going to store the final result, and that will be equal to, right? So I already told you about this number format, right? Okay, so number format. So what this will do is, it will allow us to format numbers inside strings. So if you are using some variable that is a number, you can actually easily make this format this into such strings very easily using this number format. So just type in number format and number format and select the first one itself. So once you do that, if you actually observe the import statements that we have inside our inside our main activity file, a new import statement has automatically been imported by the Android Studio. That is because we had changed the one of those settings to auto import. So it will actually bring up this number format, and from that number format we need to access a certain function that is known as get. So you just put in a dot symbol after the number format and just type in get currency instance and select the this one, get currency instance. So this is actually a pretty cool function that we have inside this number format class. What this will do is, it will actually check the region data that, like when you actually set up your phone for the first time, it will actually ask you in which region you are operating, whether that is which country. If you are in India or in the United States or in some other country, you need to specify that when you set up your device, right? So this get currency instance function will actually go into your system and check which region you are using your phone on, and based on that location, based on that region, it will provide the symbol for the currency in that region. So if you actually try and run this app, and before you run that app, if you change the region to somewhere else, say USA, this rupee symbol will be changed to dollar symbol automatically. You don't have to worry about that. So this will give us a standardization for the app. This is a pretty useful function that we can use every time we use some currency in our app. So we got the currency instance. Now what do we need in the formatted tip? So there is actually another built-in function in Kotlin that will enable us to format this, that is we can actually put this variable, this integer variable, to a text or a string. So for that, you just take a number format dot currency dot get currency instance, open bracket and close bracket, and then put a dot, and then type in format, right, and select the format number double from the drop down menu. So you can actually put in a variable that is of the double type inside this format function, and it will actually convert it into a formatted string. So the variable that we need to pass is this tip amount, right? Tip. So just passing tip. So now we have the formatted tip inside our variable. Now now that we have the formatted variable, we need to actually put it inside this tip amount variable, right? Because without that, it won't get displayed onto the main activity, onto our phone, right? This is just a local variable that's inside this class, but in order to render anything onto our screen, we need to actually specify this inside our layout file and make this the correct variable. So for that, where do we need to store that? We need to store that inside where this text view, right? This is the last text view, this text view known as tip result, right? So like all other UI elements that we access, we are using the binding, view binding, in order to access the UI elements. So we are going to actually access this tip result text view right now. So just type in binding dot uh, tip result. Select the tip result, not the tip options. Select tip result, right? So now we have accessed the text view. So now the next thing that we need to do is we need to store this formatted tip inside the text view, right? So there is actually a parameter known as text, right? We have used that uh, a number of times, like here in this text view, Android text, how was the service? So there is the attribute known as text. So binding dot tip result, then you type in dot text, right? This is where we are going to store our text. And what do you need to actually store? So in this formatted tip, we actually have something like something of the form this currency symbol, that is our rupee symbol, or any other currency symbol that depends on your device, and then some numbers, right? This tip amount, this tip result in the formatted tip, right? Now we need to combine that with this tip amount string that we just created inside our string.xml file. So what we actually do is we use another Kotlin built-in function known as getString. So this will help us to easily that is it will help us to that is we can combine a lot of strings to create a single string. That is what is meant by this getString function. So we need to pass in a number of variables so that we can combine those two, and we can convert it into a string. So inside the getString, the first thing that we need is this tip amount, right? So where do you actually find that tip amount? So like what we did with this thing, inside the when we calculated the tip percentage using the checked radio button, we had used r.id. Option 20%, right? So similarly, uh, when the app is created or when the app is run for any time, so when the app is run, what will happen is Kotlin will actually create a class known as R, and inside that R class there will be a lot of subclasses like id or string, and there will be a lot of classes based on whatever things that you have in this folders. There will be different classes for that. So this strings.xml will be changed to a string class, right? So in that string class we have the variable known as tip amount. So that is what we need to access. So just inside this get string, we need to pass two variables. So the first one is the ID of that string, that is this string tip amount. So just type r dot string dot, and then you get a bunch of these values in here, and we need to select what it is, tip amount, right? This is what we name that string. So just type in tip amount, just select that from the suggestions, right? So we have passed on this tip amount thing. Now we need to pass the format, right? So just put a comma, and as a second parameter you just put in formatted tip, select formatted tip. So what this will do is it will take this tip amount text from this string.xml file and add this formatted tip to that. So this is where actually this percentage s gets replaced by our formatted tip. Formatted tip contains this rupee symbol and the text and the number associated with it, right? So this is pretty much it when it comes to the logic, but there's a catch. So we have created this calculate tip function, right? But if you just see on the left side near your scroll bar, you will see that variable declaration. I'm sorry, not that one. Yeah, this one. This yellow bar that says function calculate tip is never used. So what this means is it won't get called on its own, right? We need, if you define a function, you need to call it so that it becomes useful. Otherwise, it will just stay there and be a dead weight. So we need to call that function, but we cannot call that function from inside that function itself, right? So we need to call it from this on create function. So inside the on create function, but outside its closing braces. So inside the on create function, you need to call the calculate tip function, but you cannot just call it without any reason. You just need to call it when the user taps on this calculate button, right? Just simply when the app starts, you don't need to calculate the tip because the user hasn't inputted anything. So once the user input is finished and the user taps on this calculate button, then only we need to calculate the tip, right? So with that logic, let's just actually see how we can call this function using that button. So first of all, we need to access that button, right? Whenever the user taps on the button, we need to call the function. So first of all, we need to access the function button. So for that, we are using view binding. So again, call the binding dot, and then we need to select the button. So what did we name the button last day? It was named as calculate button. So in main activity, select calculate button, right? So we have the calculate button. Now we need to check whether the user is tapping on the button or not. So we can't just predict at what time the user will click this button. He can take as much time as he wants. If the user wants to click on the button as soon as he does the input, he can do that, or he can change the input in any number of ways and play with these icons and all, and after that he can click this calculate button. So based on the user's choice, this calculate button will be called. So we need to actually set a what is known as a click listener. So what this click listener is that it will actually be something like that actually actively listens to whether the user is doing anything. So it will actively check whether the user is clicking this button or not, and whenever the user clicks the button, it can perform a certain action. So that's what is meant by a click listener. So in order to set up a click listener on a button, we need to actually use a function. So for that, you just type in, we have already accessed the button. Now you need to set a click listener to this button. So put in a dot and then type in set on click listener and select the second one with the curly braces. That is the one that we want. Don't select the one with just the regular brackets. You need to select the one with the curly braces. So this will actually set a click listener on this button. So whenever you open up the app, this click listener will get started, and it will be actively monitoring this button. So whenever the user clicks the button, it can actually do some activity. So it will keep running as long as this app is in the foreground. So once the user clicks this, what do we need to do? We need to execute this calculate tip function. So just type in calculate tip. Calculate tip. So once you do that, this calculate tip function will be called. So whenever the user clicks on the button, this function will work. So this is basically a rough outline. I mean, this is basically it when it comes to the logic of our app. So if there is any doubt, please do ask. We have almost completed all of the logic. Now we just need to run this app and check to see whether it is running properly. So please do ask any doubts. We have almost completed all of the logic stuff. If you have any doubt, please do ask now. If you are not clear with any part of this thing, maybe this binding object or some of these IDs that we use, if you have any doubt regarding that, please do ask in the chats right now. Okay. Okay, so I think if you have any doubts, please do put it in there. I will be looking to it. So now that we have created this much of our app, let's just actually run this and test it out. So let's just see how it looks like. So I think, are there any doubts? No. So let's just run this app. So let me just bring up this thing. Yeah. So now you just need to click this run button and it will start building the app. It can take some time depending on the speed of your system. So it will run various tasks and the Gradle will build the app and it will automatically get installed onto your phone. So let's just wait for the build to finish. It can take about a minute or so, I think. Let's just wait. You guys can run the app on your own device in this time. Right, so I think the app was built successfully. And you shouldn't get any errors. Please do tell me if you accidentally get any errors. It's installing and launching. Right, so on my phone, yeah, so this is the app. So as you can see, we have the cost of service text. We have this text that says how was the service. Then we have this radio button. Now you can actually experiment various stuff with this. You can type in any value that you want and just putting some random value, 645, sure, and then select this various things, various buttons. You can select any of them. You can play around with this thing, and then this roundup tip, you can put it on or off. So just click on the calculate button. Till now I haven't clicked on the calculate button, so that's why the click listener isn't doing anything. But as soon as I click the calculate button, it will show me a tip amount and it says 117 rupees. I'm sure it must be 18% of this thing and rounded up. If you just turn off this roundup tip, it will actually show 116.10. So it is actually working perfectly right now, right? So this looks perfect. We can actually try out various combinations to see various results. So I hope all of your apps are behaving as they are supposed to be, right? So now let's just see what all bugs we can find in this app. So debugging is a very important step in creating an app. So there can be a lot of errors that can cause an app to crash, or that can cause an app to misbehave. So this may not be any error that appears due to you coding in wrong stuff. It got compiled successfully and the app is running perfectly fine. You can type in any number, you can type in decimal numbers, it's still working. So you need to debug this app. So okay, so let me see if there's one question. Using emulator, I'm getting a that is because maybe in the emulator you set the region as America or something, USA or something. That's why it's showing as $sign. If you use your own phone, it will probably be India. So if you use that, you will get the you get the rupee sign instead of the $sign. So don't worry about that. It will actually be the correct thing that's set up on that device. So uh, I don't know if you can change the setting in your emulator. So please do try it on your phone to be sure that you are getting a rupee symbol. I am getting a rupee symbol here. Right. So now about the debugging. So I want all of you to try out this thing. Just launch your app like this, and without inputting anything in this cost of service field, you just need to click this calculate button, right? So without anything, you can keep this radio button as anything, you can keep this switch as anything, but you just need to keep this cost of service text empty. So you just keep this empty and press the calculate button and see what happens. So let me just try out that. And oh my god, it just got crashed. Let me just try it again. Let me just open up my app again, and I'm not going to input anything here, and I'm going to tap the calculate button. Oh, and I'm seeing that it is getting crashed so many times. I need to report that. I'm not going to report that. This is actually a bug that we have in your app. It is not because you wrote in the wrong code. It is just because you haven't checked for a certain condition. So whenever you have nothing in this cost of service text, the app will crash. So this is actually a very bad behavior for any app, right? You expect the app to be working any time at all times, right? You can't just expect an app to crash on its own when you're because you haven't given it some value or stuff. So you need to actually rectify this error. So actually what is happening is that if you just go into this log cat, there will be actually Android will actually do so wait a second, something is wrong with this log cat. So actually Android Studio will monitor everything that your app is doing. So let me actually show you about this log cat feature in the Android Studio. So if you go into this top bar, you will see uh, an icon that looks like a bug, right? It is used for debugging an app. So you just click on this, and what it will do is it will launch the app in debug mode. So what that will do enable you is it is waiting for the debugger. So let's just wait. Couldn't connect to remote host. So I think there is some problem with this. Yeah. Oh, I think there is some problem with my phone or something. I don't know. It should probably be some error. Anyway, so actually, I intended to show you this thing called logcat. So in this logcat, what will happen is it will record everything that the app is going through. It will detect and print out all of these processes that the app is going through. I'm sorry it's not working properly. I think there's some problem with my Android Studio or probably my phone, so I'm not able to show you that. So let me actually tell you why this app is getting crashed. So if I just open up that app once again and tap this calculate button, and it gets crashed. So let me actually tell you why this app is getting crashed. Okay, so actually you see this string in text field variable, right? So in that we have converted it to string. Okay, that's cool. So what will happen is when you don't have anything in your when you don't have anything in this text field, it will actually be a null type, right? Null is a kind of a type in Kotlin. So since it is a null type, you cannot actually put this change this string into a double, because null doesn't have any value. It is the meaning of null is that it is not zero. It is actually meaning that there is nothing in that, so not even zero. So you cannot actually convert it into a null into a data type like double. So what you need to do is you need to check whenever this thing is becoming null and accordingly handle the situation. So if the string is not null, you can use this thing. But what happens when the string is null? You need to print some error message or tell the user to input some number that is not a null. So the problem comes in this line, in my 18th line, that is val cost equals string in text field dot to double. So here it will be a null and that won't be a problem, but in when you convert it into a variable like a double, uh, you need to know whether it is you need to handle it differently if it is a null. So we are going to modify this double function, and we are going to replace it using a different function that is also a predefined function in Kotlin. It is known as to double or null. So what this will do is, if this parameter, this string in text field is not null, it will convert this cost to null. And if it is a null type, it will convert this cost to a null variable. So that is what is meant by this to double or null. So whenever we have a value, it will convert it to a double, otherwise it will convert it to a null. So now we have a valid cost value. So now it should probably work, but the problem is when the thing is null, when the cost is null, we need to handle it differently, right? So we need to print some error message or some message for the user. So after this val cost equals string in text field dot to double or null, you need to check whether the cost is a null or not. And if it is a null, you need to print that message. And if it isn't, you can continue with the rest of these things, right? So and also if you see here, when we calculated the tip, it shows an error. If you see where is that, it is showing an error here. It is saying that actually you cannot multiply using null types, right? So we need to handle it differently. So first of all, we need to check whether this cost variable is a null or not. So I'm going to use an if statement. If cost, and we need to check whether it is a null. So cost equal to null, small letter null. So what this will do is it will check whether the cost is a null or not. And if it is a null, we need to handle it differently. Otherwise we can go into this part of the part of our code. So if this is a null, we need to print some text there. So some message. like maybe we can print like please enter a valid cost of service. That's the kind of message that we need to print. So where is this result being printed? Inside the text field, that is this text field. This, instead of this tip result, we will display the message that says please enter a valid cost of service. So we need to select this thing itself, that is binding dot tip result dot text. So just type in binding dot tip result dot text, and in that text field you need to print the result, right? So you just you can actually type in like this, because we are in a main activity file. So you can actually use double quotes to type in strings inside this text field, and I'm just typing please enter a valid cost of service, right? So whenever this will happen, whenever the cost is null, it will print this message onto the screen, please enter a valid cost of service. And once you have done that, we don't need to execute the rest of this code, because that may cause errors, because if it is null, and once it comes out of this if statement, there will be error right here when you calculate the tip. So you need to stop the execution of this function right here, and for that stop page, you need to use a statement known as return statement. This is probably used in most other languages for sudden exit from a function. So if the cost is null, it will print this message and just stop the rest of the execution from happening. So and once the user enters a valid cost of service, the app can resume, and it can do the rest of this calculation step. So this is how we correct that error. Now also, if you observe closely, in where we wrote this please enter a valid cost of service, it is showing a suggestion that this text cannot be translated to other things. That's kind of like the same thing that we had here, right? When we use this Android text attribute, and we just typed in a hard-coded string, we got the same kind of a warning. So you just need to do, what you need to do is hover your mouse pointer over this text and select this suppress add suppress lint, this thing. So just take that option, and it will add a new line here that says suppress lint set text one set text I18n, so something like that. So this will actually enable the others to use this as an string that can be made into translated to other languages. So that is similar to what we did with the strings.xml, but since we are in the main activity, we need to do it differently. That's why we did it this way. So just do that, and now the app should be theoretically running perfectly fine. So let's just see how the app performs now, whether we had rectified our bug or not. So obviously, if you need to get the changes in your app, you need to build it again. So you just click this run button and wait for the build to finish. And once the build is finished, you will get the app running without all the errors. Let's just run the app. It's installing and it's launching. Right. So now the app looks the same. It doesn't have any difference. You can actually type in something here, 2344 or something. You can select various buttons, and all of that thing is working. Roundup tip is also working. Now we need to see whether we have addressed our bug or not. So just clear off everything that you typed in into the cost of service field, and just select this calculate button. So if the app crashes again, then that's a bad sign. Then it means that our correction did not get applied, or our correction was not proper. So just tap this calculate button, And yes, it shows please enter a valid cost of service. No matter how many times you click this calculate button, it will show the same thing. Please enter a valid cost of service. So once you enter a number and you type the calculate again, and it will be changed to tip amount. So this is how you rectify errors inside your code. So now the app is working fine. So let me just end this. So are there any doubts with what we had done so far? Whether you understood how we cleared that error in our app, that bug, and all of that stuff? Was that clear? I hope it was, because it is kind of easy thing. And then again, you need to know about these built-in classes a lot. So was that clear? Can we have it okay in the chats? Or else if you have any doubts, please do ask that. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next thing. Yeah. So now, if you actually see this app, get this out. So in this app, if you see, this text doesn't look very well aligned, right? It looks janky, and it looks kind of like stuck onto this corner, right? We need some spacing between these things. We need to observe some social distancing, so to say. So we need to provide some way to change the style of this app. We need to make this app look a bit more better on the eyes. So we can provide some space between these UI elements, and also between the screen edges of our screen and these UI elements. So if you just look at this app, that screenshot that we had made, so in that you can see this cost of service text, or this input layout, or this radio buttons. All of these are kind of like separated from each other, and also from the edges of the screen. So that is the first thing that we need to address. So in order to make the app look good, we need to add a few parameters into our constraint layout. So like, let me just get off that. So inside the constraint layout, we need to provide some margins, right? So there are two different types of ways in which you can provide those spacing. That is the spacing between these things, and also the spacing between the edges of the screen and the UI elements. So we will actually use two types of spacing. One of them is called padding, and the other is called margin, right? So what is the difference between padding and margin? So let me actually show you this design layout so that you can understand that easily. So if you see here, you can see that all of these elements are separated by boundaries, these lines, right? So when you provide a padding to a certain UI element, what will happen is it will add a little bit of space, say some space that you define for the padding, and it will add the space outside this margin. So the contents inside will stay the same, but it will add a padding outside. So what will happen is these contents will be further pushed away from this content, and that is what is known as a padding. And margin means it will actually provide a spacing inside this element. So the other elements will remain at the same position, but this thing will get shrunk a little bit, so that it will look like this thing is separated from the other UI elements. So that is what is meant by margin and padding. I hope it was clear. So first of all, we need to provide some space between this edge of the screen and these UI elements, right? So first of all, we need to provide a padding to this. I'm sorry, we need to provide a padding of 16. We need to provide a padding to the constraint layout. So what this will do is it will add a space inside this layout, and it will actually separate these UI elements from the edge of the screen. So in the constraint layout tag, you just need to add a new attribute known as padding. So just type in padding, and there are a lot of different types of padding: padding bottom, padding end, or just simple padding. If you take padding bottom, what it will do is it will provide a padding at the bottom of the screen only, and the rest of the three sides will remain the same. But if you select padding, it will provide a padding to the all four edges of the screen. So we need to select that one so that it can provide padding to all the sides. So, and we need to specify a certain value. So we can actually provide a values in the unit using DP. So this is the same unit that we used while we were explaining about widths and heights. So in the padding, you need to provide a padding of 16 dp. This is a nominal value. I'm just using this value. You can try out different values on your own. That won't be a problem. But putting this 16 dp padding will provide ample space for the UI elements while not making it too compressed. So it won't show up here. I think it will be there in the app. So once you provide the padding, now you need separation between these UI elements, right? So for that, actually, let's just go into the this text input layout. So we have provided the padding here from the edge of the screen. We need to provide a padding on this side, right? Or a margin on this side, so that it will get started only after a certain margin, so that it won't be stuck onto the edge of this side. So inside the text input layout, you add a new parameter that is known as margin. And if you just go into margin, you will see a lot of margins, and we just need to provide the margin to the starting side of this text input layout. We don't need to provide anything on this side, because that side will already be a blank space. We need to provide it to the left side. So margin, and you just select margin start. There will be a margin start. Don't select margin left, because there's a fine difference between start and left. So if you put it as left, it will always be on the left. But if you put it as start, depending on the region where you are using your phone, sometimes you may use your phone with some language like Arabic or something. So in those languages, the text is actually starting from the right side of the screen. So if you put the margin as star, it will actually understand that, and it will actually, excuse me for a minute. Out of friendly I'm sorry for that interruption. So inside the margins start, you need to select this margin start parameter. So in that thing, yeah, so again I'm going to give it a value of 16d, right? So this will actually provide a sufficient margin to that thing. Now the next thing is this edit text will be automatically aligned with the text input layout, so you don't have to do anything for that. And then again we come to this text view. It should also be given as margin to the start, right? So you just provide another margin. Now we need the text view to be separated from the other views as well, right? Because we need a separation here, otherwise this will get stuck onto the bottom of this thing. So we need to provide a margin on all four sides, so that it will get nice and separated from all other UI elements. So inside the text view, that is the service question, you just add another thing, that is a margin, a regular margin that will provide a margin on all four sides, and you just put the value as 16 dp again, right? So what this will do is it will add a margin all throughout this text view, and it will be separated from the edge of the screen as well as from other UI elements. So that's the text view done. Now the next thing is this radio buttons, right? So actually, if you just observe our app, you can see that there is actually sufficient spacing between these things, right? You don't really need to explicitly add more space between these things. It is already at a good position. So we don't actually need to provide any margin or anything for this radio group. So we can actually leave the radio group for now. And the next thing is switch material. So the switch material, in that switch, we need to provide some sort of a margin. That is, if you look at this, there's a margin of about 16 dp. It is aligned with this thing, right? So you need to provide a margin here. Now inside the switch material, create a new parameter, and that is margin start. You just need to put a margin start because it is already separated from the other elements. So just put a margin start and put the value as 16 dp again. And finally, for the button, actually we need it to be separated from this switch. So I'm going to give it a smaller value. So inside this button, create another margin, and that will only be for the margin top, right? So that is because actually margin, you need to provide two margins there. So the first one, wait a second, I think we can go with just one margin. So margin top, we need to provide a top margin so that it gets separated from the switch material above it. So just margin top, and I'm going to give it a smaller value of 8 dp. And the last one is this text view. Here also I'm going to give it a top margin. So margin top, and again 8 dp. So these values are actually somewhat flexible. You can try out different values so that your app may look good. So I think this adding this margin was clear. Now let's just actually run this app and see how it looks like. So I'm going to build this app. It's installing. And now you can see these elements are finely separated from the edges, and also there is a really good separation between the UI elements. So I think we have done a pretty good job at that. But now if you just observe, this alignment isn't that proper. That is because if you just see this thing, there are actually these three icons here, right? These three icons that we placed just before these things. So it would be better if we add those icons now and then align these positions, align the positions of these things along with that. So that's what we are going to do now. So let me actually stop this run. So if there's any doubt, please do ask. Now the next thing is adding those icons, right? So if you just see, there are three icons. One is this icon of a store, then there is this room service icon, and then there is this arrow icon. So we need to actually import those icons into our app. We can't just build them from scratch. There are actually icons that are provided by Android Studio itself, and we need to just import them into our app. So for that, open your on the left side, there will be a pane with a lot of different views that are possible. So in that, select resource manager, right? So open this resource manager, and there will be a new pane that appears on the screen. Select the resource manager, and there will be a lot of these different things. There are colors, there are layouts, and there are a lot of things. You just need to select this plus icon on the top of this resource manager palette, and once you click that plus button, you will see four options. There's a drawable resource file, there's an image asset, there's a vector asset, and import drawables. So what I need you to do is, I need you to select this vector asset. So what this will do is, vectors are actually XML files, but they can actually be displayed onto the screen as image files. So vectors are really efficient in many ways. They can actually provide a really, they are actually programmed from scratch, and they can have fine shapes that do not have any pixelation or anything. Instead of using images that can have say a specific resolution, vectors actually take the resolution of the screen and resize themselves accordingly. So they are pretty useful, and there are a lot of vectors that are already provided by Android Studio in its assets. In its assets. So when this dialog box appears, you just select the asset type as clipart, and first of all you need to select the icon that you want. So you just click on this Android icon, that is the selected clipart by default, or the selected vector by default. You need to change that. So once you click on that, there will be this select icon dialog box, and there are tons of different icons in here, and you can't just go in through these and select your icon by looking at them. You need to search for them. So the first icon that I want is this store icon. This is called a store icon. So there's a search box here. You just type in store, right? So and there will be a, and it will search for the icons that have the name store or are related to a store, and you just select this store icon and click OK, right? And now you need to name this icon so that you can use it in your app. So I'm going to name it IC underscore store, right? You can name it anything, but I'm going to name it IC underscore store, and the clipart is this store icon. Make sure that the clip type is asset type is clipart. Then the size and all you can leave it as default. Click on next, and it will show you the directory where you want to store this vector asset. And I'm going to leave it as default and click finish. Once you do that, there will be actually a store icon that gets created inside your drawable folder, right? If you observe, there are only two icons here, but now a third one has appeared. If you just double click that, you can actually see the underlying XML code and this icon, right? So you don't need to edit anything in here. You can just view it if you want. Now we need two more icons, right? One is this room service icon, and one is this call made icon. This is called a call made icon. So we need to import those two as well. So click on this plus, and again select the vector asset, and inside here we need to select the icon. So just search for room service. Yeah, this one. So this is the room service icon. It will be like a dish, sort of like a dish. So open that, click that, click on OK, and again leave the size and thing to the same, and I'm going to rename this as IC room underscore service. So I can access this for later. Click on next, click on finish. So the second one has been imported, and you can preview it if you want to. Now for the third one, that is a call made symbol. This is actually used in various calling apps, right? So you may see an outgoing call or something like that. So see, a similar icon will be placed there. So we need to import that one as well. So click on plus, select vector asset, and select the icon as search for that all made, and you will see this arrow icon. Click on that, click OK, and I'm going to name this IC roundup or something, because CodeMate doesn't make any sense in our app. I'm going to name this IC roundup and click on next, and it will show you the folder where it's stored. Click on finish. So once you have done this, you can actually use this in your app. Use these three icons in your app. So that is what we are going to do next. I think it was clear, right? Anybody had any issues while importing these three icons? Please do tell me in the chat. And we are going to use them in our app. So we are going to use them as images, right? These are XML files, they are vectors, but we can actually use them as images. So for using images in an app, you in an XML, you need to use the image view. So for the first one, where do we need to place it? It should be right before this input layout box, right? So I'm going to create a new image. Oh, not an image button, but an image view, right? And we need to specify its width and height. So I'm going to keep it as wrap content so that it will be as wide and as tall as the image that we are using. And first of all, we need to specify what image that we need to specify the image that we are using, right? So for that, there is a parameter known as src compat. So src compat, you just need to type in app, then a colon, and then the src compat, and that will be equal to the image that we want to show. So the first image that we want to show is this store icon, and we actually use the name called IC_store. So you can use the thing as in a double quotes, and this was actually stored in the drawable folder, right? So we can actually access that folder using @drawable, and in that you need to select the one for the store, right? And now we need to specify the ID for this image view, because we have given IDs for all other things. So we need to give an ID @ID plus, and I'm going to give it the name icon underscore post underscore of underscore service. And now we need to constrain it. So for the constraint, it might seem kind of confusing at first. We need to constrain the start of this thing to the start of the constraint layout. So that one is pretty obvious. Let's just do that. Start off. You need to select the constraint app layout constraint start off, and we need to start from the start of the constraint layout. So you just type in parent and for the vertical constraints, you might think you need to constrain it to the top of this thing, but what will happen then is it will actually move to the top of this app bar, right? Bottom of this app bar. But you need to actually we need it to be constrained to be actually aligned with this text input layout, such that the middle of this thing passes through the middle of this text input layout. So the method to do that is actually to constrain the top of this icon to the top of this text input layout, and the bottom of this icon to the bottom of the text input layout. So just type you need to set two parameters, that is top to top of. First one is the constraint top to top of, and you need to specify the ID of this this text input layout, which was @ID / cost of service. So what this will do is it will align the top of this thing to the top of the cost of service text, and you need to align the bottom also. So bottom to bottom of, you need to select this, where is it? Bottom to bottom of, you need to select this one, and again with @id / cost of service. So what this will do is it will actually align this thing properly in the center of the horizontal of center of the this icon will pass through the center of this text box. So I think I made a mistake here. It should actually be just a src attribute. Sorry, src Android src, that is the attribute that we want, right? So now the drawable is showing up properly. So please do change that. I earlier put it as app:/src src compact. You need to change it to Android:/src, and then constrain it to the top and bottom of the input field. So with that done, now if you see, we need to change the constraint for this text input layer. Earlier it was constrained to the edge of the screen with a small padding, right? But now we need to constrain the start of this thing to the end of this icon so that it can properly get aligned. So I'm going to actually change the constraint for this thing, and we had given the constraint start to start of, I'm sorry, this one, yeah. So start to start of parent, that was the constraint that we had given, but we need to change it to the end of this image view. So you need to change this constraint to start to end of. You need to change it to start to end of, and we need to change this parent to this image icon, and we had given the id as icon cost of service. So @id and select icon cost of service. So what this will do is it will align this thing to the end of this icon. That's what it will do. And now we need to insert our second icon that is next to this service question. So if you look at the XML, this is the service question. So I'm going to add an image view just above that image view, and I'm going to set the width and height as wrap content so that it will be as wide and as tall as the content inside of it. Then I need to specify an id, and I'm going to give a new id as icon underscore service underscore question. So I have created a new id for that. Now the next thing is we need to set the source for the actual image itself. So you need to type src and select the image, and that is in @drawable, similar to what we did earlier, drawable, and select the room service icon. Right now we need to constrain it. So the constraining part is somewhat similar to what we did earlier. We are constraining the start to start of parent, top to top of, but this time the cost of service will be changed to this service question. So that is the only change. So let me just copy this thing quickly and just paste it in our image view, but we need to change this cost of service to service question, and again for the bottom service question. So what this will do is it will align the this icon to the top and bottom of this service question so that it gets properly aligned. And now we need to change the thing for the image view. I'm sorry, the text view. So we had earlier put it as start to start of parent. We need to change it to start to end of. Start to end of. Start to end of, and instead of parent we are going to be putting it to the end of that image view that we just added. That was @id slash icon service question. Icon service question. And now finally for the third one, before we do it for the third one, if you just see this design view, you might see that the radio buttons are misaligned, right? Yeah, it is actually to the edge of this edge of the screen, but we need to actually align it to the start of this service text. So for that, I'm going to add a constraint for the radio group, that is make a small edit to the constraint of this radio group, and that will be it was constraint start to start of parent. I'm going to change it to start to start of that text view that we just wrote above here. So I'm going to change it to @id slash service question. So what this will do is it will align this radio buttons right where the this service question starts. So if the service question starts at the edge of this thing, the radio buttons will also start there. And if you place this service question right here, then the radio buttons will move over to here. So it will actually get aligned perfectly. Now, if you just see the design view, you can actually see that this thing has been aligned correctly. Now for the third icon, and we need to place it right before this switch icon. So I'm going to create a new image view. Again, width and height will be wrap content, and we need to specify an ID first. I'm going to give it an ID @id plus icon underscore round underscore up underscore pick. So this is the ID that I'm going to give it, and again we need to constrain it. So it's a similar constraint to what we did with the other image views, this one. So I can just copy paste that same thing here also and change this thing to the switch. So it will be round up switch, and this one also will be round up switch. Right, so now that image view has also been entered, and now we need to change this switch materials start to start of to the start to end of this. We need to change this thing again to start to end of, and instead of parent, I'm going to give it @id icon. This one, where is that? Icon roundup tip. So this will be aligned correctly now. And also for the button, I am going to give it start to start of parent. Instead of that, I'm going to give it start to start of that switch material. So @id slash roundup switch. So this will, what this will do is it will align the button to the start of this switch material. So this is basically everything that we need to code. I think I went a bit too fast, right? I'm sorry for that. We just needed to kind of get to a point where we can actually get a finished app. That's why I did that. I'm sorry for that. If you have any doubt, please do ask it. I'll clarify it right now. Let's just actually run this app on the device. So I'm going to run this app. So this time it will be correctly aligned to the various positions that we intended it to be. Look at the chats after this gets run. The app gets compiled successfully. Now we'll start installing. it's launching. So wait a second, I think the dark mode came on. I'm sorry. Yeah, so right now, oh wait, I think I missed something. Oh wait, I didn't actually give the name source for this image view, so let me just add that as well. So you just need src, and I'm going to give it at the rate drawable and select roundup. So now it should be fine. What was the question again? Please do ask any doubts if you have any. I'll be just running this app to show you again. Installing, it's launching. Yeah. So now if you look at our app, it looks much better, right? We have everything properly aligned and everything is properly functional. We have a decent spacing between all of our UI elements, and we have also added these icons. Now the only thing that's missing from this screenshot is actually these themes, these colors, and all of these things. We didn't actually do that, and I'm sorry we don't have more time to do that. If we had time, I would have definitely made this look a lot better, because right now this is how it looks like, but it is completely functional and all of the things are properly aligned. So the only thing that remains is the theming of the app. You can run this app without any problem now. So this is basically what we have planned for the day. So are there any questions? Please do ask them now. If not, we'll be winding up very shortly. So please do ask them if you have any. This is where we are ending our coding. And let me actually go back to our slides. I have just one more thing to show you guys. So there is this course known as Android Kotlin Fundamentals course. This is a course provided by Google. So you can go and check out this g.co/Android Study Jams. This is actually a page where you will get the course. So this is actually a free course that is provided by Google. Let me actually go to that page to show you that. g.co/Android Study Jams. So let this load up. So this is the page where you can access this course, and I would recommend every one of you to attend this course. This is a really good course. It is very beginner friendly. Even if you don't know much about this development and all, it will be really helpful for you. There are a lot of units inside this program, this course, and inside the units you will have various sub units, and within those there will be a lot of activities and these code labs where they'll show you how to create a bunch of stuff, like all of these apps that we created today, and all of those things, they are already included in this course. Please do check it out and try to register for this. You can start from any of these. If you feel like you can handle what we did today, please do register for this prior programming experience track as well. But if you are really new to programming, you can start with this new to programming track, and once you complete this prior programming experience track, you can avail a certificate from the DSC, from DSC MEC. So please do try and utilize this course for the same. Now the last thing, and you'll get badges and all for this for attending the course. So share what you have learned with the world. So please do, if you plan to put anything on your social media, please do tag DSC, MEC, and Android Study Jams. And yeah, so what do you like about this app development? What do you feel about this? Does it feel like a lot of work, or do you feel like you want to continue in this field? So tell me your honest opinion in the chat. And there are a lot of resources for learning this. We'll be sending you a mail with all of these resources, so do check that out. And also join our Discord server if you haven't already. The link is probably, yeah, so the link is there. Please do join our Discord server. And if you have any doubts regarding what we did today, or regarding the course, or whatever it may be regarding this app development, please do ask in our Discord server. I will be active there, and we can solve all your doubts. So thank you.
So guys, thank you for your patience, and we appreciate you staying with us all this while and supporting this event. And I hope it was a worthwhile use of your time. I hope everybody has learned something from this session, and do join our Discord server. We will have the upcoming events from DSC would be put up in the Discord server as well. Also, the follow up on this Android Study Jam session would also be there. Discussions, doubt clearing, everything would happen there. So it's good if you want to join the community. So please do. And the first and second sessions of Android Study Jam are available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to refer, or if you haven't seen them yet, please do check them out. And thank you for being there with us. If there is any doubts that you want to get cleared now, you can put it in the chats.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Thank you for all your support. You can also join our Discord server and ask your doubts there. I'll be there to clarify you.
So we hope nobody has any doubts. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
You so yeah, so we'll be sending you the mail with all those resources that I showed you just now. So please do check it out, and do register for the Android Study Jams course. That's it. Thank you. Signing out.